working with colour as both an art and a science, because at the end of the day, you want your designs to look great. You want them to be beautiful. The colour schemes do need to work aesthetically, but just as importantly is sort of the science behind how you work with colour and how it actually affects humans and users using that space. And it's actually really fascinating when you like dig into like some of the research that's been done on like using colour and the effect it has on, you know, human psychology. And again, I always say like I'm no expert in this, but have read a little bit about how it can actually like really affect, you know, for example, in workplace specifically, certain colours like shades of blue have been known to like actually increase focus and productivity. There's research that shows it can literally release chemicals in the brain being surrounded by those colours to help like give clarity. So, you know, picking certain tones and hues to work in those sorts of environments are really important. And then likewise, there's a lot of research around more like vibrant colours and warm colours that can really help and use sort of creative thinking and great collaboration. And I think when you actually look into the actual physical effects that it has on people, that to me is really key, because then you're not only marrying something that looks really great, but you're giving purpose to your design. And you know, I think that's really important for when like we as designers in workplace are thinking, okay, what should my colour palette be? It shouldn't just be, you know, random choices. It actually should be based on like the purpose of what's happening in each space, what's the function happening, what's the activity that you want these users to have in each individual area, and then you can start to think about, you know, how you'd assign colours to each space.
Yeah, the more and more we have these talks, is the more we're finding out that the role of the designer is so much deeper than just that surface level, and really it's the psychology of it, understanding the space, designing for spaces, designing for colour. It's actually so in depth, the understanding what a designer has to go through. I don't think they get near enough praise, but you know, therefore we have these sort of talks.
Yeah, because at home, I don't know, the light changes and I probably want something different at home than whatever I want at work.
It's more personal at home as well. You don't have a decision of you're making for lots of different people. So I find that you can go to town at home, and you can go to town in an office as well, but you have to take into consideration of everybody that's in the office.
Well, depending what partner you have at home as well, what they let you do and what they not let you do.
Yes.
or also like the backdrops. I find myself like, I don't know, curating my views at home, and maybe it's like around the kitchen where we all are all the time, and we have a lot of plants and stuff. And then when I'm doing a call from home, my house, I'm kind of like ashamed. My house doesn't look like an interior design house. Like we have a colleague in the office that we joke around. He's part of the pre-construction team. He's like, his house is amazing. But I think there's like a lot of decisions that we made today that we feel like it's just simple at home, and in the offices you have to take a little bit more time just to curate that a little bit more, let it settle in.
Colour is so subjective and it is so personal. Like people inevitably will like different colours, like, you know, you can't change that. But I think at home it is your choice, you're right. When I think about workspace design, I always think about now is sort of the neurodiverse aspect, because again, like design is never going to be a one size fits all. So you have to think about actually, because the other aspect of the science part of it, people perceive colour in very different ways as well. Even when you look into it, people often have like different receptors in their eyes. They actually don't. So if I looked at this, you might see a different colour to me slightly. So even just like the physical makeup of people, like you do see things in different ways. And I think in the workspace, you do have to at least provide a space for everyone. It's not like every single space has to work for everyone. It's just you've got to have enough variety. And that can come into like patterns and things. Some people much prefer calmer spaces. Other people actually, depending on how their brain works, like to be in busier spaces to help them focus. So I think that's the biggest difference between like, you know, your own home and then the workspace.
Sometimes though, in like a space like this, it's not a big office, and you've got like a team of like, I don't know, 10 different people using it. I found it quite hard to find little pockets for everyone. So sometimes, just even using just textures in colour can kind of make it subtly calming for everybody.
Yeah.
Mightn't suit everybody.
But to your point about lighting,
Yeah.
or having user control in spaces can like dramatically
Change that.
the color tone
Yeah.
of a light. So you might just have one meeting space, but the ability, like depending on who's using
Dim it. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there are definitely techniques you can use even if you don't have the space.
I think it's also like specifying lighting is another layer. Like we have an interior designer that helps us with lighting design now, and she was explaining us I didn't know about CRI levels and how if you specify lighting that is below 90, then the colors are not truthful. So I was
What
like,
is CRI?
oh my god, what do we
And
have
I
in
could be
the
the only one who doesn't know that, and that's fine.
Correct.
At least that now.
So whenever you specify a lighting that fixture, whatever lighting fixture you have, it will have a spec sheet, so you can request that from any supplier that is selling you the lights. And there is a value called CRI, and it's about the color rendering of the lighting that will come through your fixture. So if you have everything above 90, and I hope that Alexandra doesn't listen to this and I'll explain it really well. If you have everything above 90, this will be a more truthful representation of what the actual color is. And that is super important if you have an office, especially for designers, or if you don't want your eyes affected. That is supposed to, in terms of wellness, also affect the way that you see and you perceive lighting and colors and textures. So that was another thing that I didn't know.
There's this amazing colour strategist. She's called Laura Guido-Clark. She has this company called Love Good Colour. You should look her up. She's incredible. Yeah. And she sort of is this educator, strategist around colour. She knows everything about like the science behind it. And she's really interesting because she is effectively a consultant who will be employed by our clients designing workspaces. And she will come in and primarily work with the design team and the client to figure out, again, like a very meaningful approach to how the client wants to evoke the right emotion from their staff. She's super interesting. Like I can't do her justice.
That sounds like a really nice job.
Yeah, and we did, because we were doing it was a massive HQ, 4,000 people, big new tower, and it was amenities, workspace. She has this really interesting approach to how you like curate a palette. And you sort of have like, you start with the base, the sort of the neutral base, and then you layer on like the accent colours which start to creep in. They all have their own sort of purpose and meaning. And then you have like the pop colours, which is the next level. And then finally
60, 30, 10 kind of thing.
Yeah. Exactly. It's all of that. And then the last layer is the shock, which is often like the neon or like the little tiny touch of something on, like a handle or a trim detail. But it's a really thoughtful approach to colour. And we ended up curating, sort of zoning spaces out, all the break rooms stacked through the building. We did like these really gorgeous like oranges and pinks, and we did like these big statements on the staircases and on all the feature joinery, and it was very much about creating somewhere that felt like warm and buzzy and exciting, because people are going to be like meeting there and socializing. So it was very much about creating the right color palettes for those areas. And then likewise in like the more focus areas, it was very much about different tones of like blues and greens, and they weren't all soft. Some of them were quite strong, but it was about like very specific colors, and she can like educate you on why certain things will work for activities. So that was for me like a real eye-opener, and it got me like really passionate about learning more about sort of the meaning behind it and the emotion of how it can evoke it.
We did a headquarters here for Unity in Brighton a few years back, and in fact my senior designer is here in the public, and we enjoyed that so much because I think our client gave us like openness to use color. She was like literally asking for more color. We did a lot of like softer greens and minty tones, because they were taking the seaside mint that they use on the rails in Brighton.
Oh yeah.
So we did that all throughout the workplace with like the acoustic screens on the desk and like soft timbers and like light greys on the floor. And then as soon as you went through these portals that were archways, you will go into a social zone, which is the center of the floor plan. And that was like an explosion. We had muralists, 3 different muralists or 4 doing different things, and there was like this striped wallpaper. It's almost like I think everyone second guessed all of our choices throughout the whole process. Like people were asking over and over, it's like, are you sure about this? The pink with the ceiling was pink, the beams were red. And at the top floor, I remember one of the last days, she texted me, it's like, oh my God, I think I made a mistake. And this the manifestation that we made on the glass was like pure orange. And I think I was like, oh, it doesn't look too bad. Let's just go and see in person, because I think if there is space for this, it's this client. This is the moment. Let's just leave it. And to this day, we visit back. I went back in February, and it looks great. It looks like joyful. It feels like you get the vibe of the city. People love it. Yeah. So yeah, it was just super nice to develop that.
I think people are less scared to use colour and variety of materials. I think it's really, you know, difficult when trends happen, because I think one of the worst things in design is where you see projects and they all sort of look the same.
Yeah.
And I struggle with that. And it's something that I'm always really passionately telling my teams, it's like, make sure it's original. Every project should be original. Every project should be unique to your client. It should tell a story, whether that story is a very simple one, but just stick to it. I really struggle with trends for that reason, because I worry that you're scrolling through LinkedIn or Instagram or whatever, and things sort of look the same. And I think commercial is getting better. I think people are becoming more educated to how to use colour properly. I still think there's a struggle more in like the resi sector, where I see a lot of like the same sort of neutral tones, and I think a lot of the time, and I get this because I was there before, I think designers can like have a bit of fear around using colour and how to use it properly, because it is a skill. It's not something that I think comes naturally to anyone. How to like layer colours properly and create material palettes properly, like it's difficult, especially if you're wanting to create like a really cohesive scheme, which our design should be cohesive, right? So I think the resi sector has a little bit of catching up to do. Products that embrace, you know, a very natural process, but I mean, even with those natural pigments and things, you can still get really rich, vibrant colours, which I find amazing, to be honest. But I think it's about being, it's going to be more intentional for sure about picking colour and the right materials. I think it sort of goes hand in hand with like sustainable design approaches and designing for well-being. And you mentioned like that biophilic layer is more and more important now for people to feel good in space. So yeah, I think it's going to be about designers becoming more educated on what it means, and how you can really create spaces that feel like intentional and cohesive.
I think like think about how the colors have been composed. Are they saturated or desaturated? What luminosity they have? If you choose a palette, do they all have like the same luminosity, or can you play with like one that pops out? And how do you play with that? Is it a handle? Is it because the actual way of creating that color makes sense, that is popping out of everything and everything else is earthy? And I think that will make your palette like kind of like fall into place and make sense and be permanent. And I think it's also fun to, you know, I would love to see that guy in person. It's amazing. You have to check it out. Kill the formula, get rid of the formulas.
Practically just change the input to get different output. Does that mean being bold with your colours? Practically, you know, advising and then delivering something off the normal radar. If that is the way, would you realistically think that it's something you could do in a way in the future? Is it something?
So I think we've already started doing that. I think I see even on commercial designs, because we only do commercial. We already say like customized specification on like curtains with colors and different things, like whereas before that wasn't the trend.